Alright, let's get this show on the road. 4. Alright, hey everyone, my name is Maxim Rambach, and I am here to show you my mechanic that I made for this sprint. So the mechanic that I made is a turret that interacts with the player by being an obstacle for them. It's going to force the player to really think about their actions and how they're going to move. This is the I in the IPM, so this is the introduction. As you can see, that little guy over there is the turret, and the minute that I open the store and it can see me, it is going to lock onto me. It's going to start firing. So what it does, it uses an AI to track and target the player. So as you can see, it follows me around, it really just rotates to me. If I get hit by that, it kills me. And the minute it loses track of me, it rotates back to, snaps back to its default position. Now, where was I? Yeah. So, as obviously, it is a consequence type of mechanic, as if you get hit by it, you're gonna die and lose a life. And you don't want to get hit by it, so you want to have to think about your movements and think about what you're going to have to do to navigate around it. And it's the practice, so it's going to show you like, hey, what can I do to really learn how to navigate this with other mechanics involved. Obviously, the more further you get the level, the more difficult it's going to be. So this is the practice. So it's going to be like, hey, practice this. And then the last one is going to be the mastery, where you have multiple turrets, where it can really shine at how difficult it's going to be to navigate and play around, especially when you're trying to do platforming. Sorry, the focus for that. So obviously the feedback it gives to the player is it looks at the player and then it fires and gives a little noise that, hey, I fired something at you. Alright, that is my mechanic for this sprint. I cannot word right now. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Hello, my name is Noah Warden, and I'll be showing off the mechanic that I added for this Milestone 1 sprint. Our team is doing a side-scroller with a future focus on adventure and exploration, vertical and horizontal, and I decided to make my mechanic a collection of numerous different hazards in a tile form, seen as popular platformers also have numerous objects as well as these spikes here, which in our game damages the player and kills them instantly. These spikes are not my creation, I added them just to showcase that damage does work properly in the level. But there's different obstacles as well as environmental hazards, one could say, like typically fire and ice, and as the most common examples, or stereotypical examples rather. And so, going based off of that, I decided to see if I couldn't do the same thing and make them a little bit different, and add some more different ones, different examples, and make them unique as well. So first off, as I mentioned before, they are in a tile format, but they can all be adjusted. Each piece can be adjusted and placed and sized individually, so you can place them in any location that you want to effectively. This first one here is fire and or lava. It damages and kills the player on impact. The second one here is ice. I decided to make this one a little bit more, I guess, different than what you might typically think of ice. So instead of sliding around on it, ice slows the player down. In the blueprint, it divides the speed by 3. And prevents the player from jumping. So you see the screen shaking there? That's me pressing the spacebar trying to jump. And I will demonstrate that as well here. I can jump, move around. I'm slower now and I cannot jump. The next one is electricity. So some games might have electrical hazards in the form of electrified surfaces that damage or harm the player on impact. Mine is a bit different. Mine goes on the idea of that once the player enters it and interacts with it, it has to charge up first before delivering a fatal shock. So you can see there, the electricity, the material becomes more and more solid, less transparent. It is a 2.5 second countdown. And so during that time, during the charge up, it's safe to pass through, but once the charge up is complete, it discharges and harms the player. And like I said, these can all be placed in different positions, so which I will demonstrate in the practice and mastery sections. The last one I decided to make was a gas obstacle. This one is pretty cool in my opinion. So upon, like the electricity, it's not lethal when you first enter it. However, once you do enter it, the gas starts to actually expand and fill up a large area. Now while it's expanding, like you see there, my person just teleported and I lost a life. While it's expanding and also while it's shrinking, gas becomes dangerous and becomes lethal to the player. And so I'll demonstrate it once more time before going through the sections for practice and mastery. Player enters, but once it starts expanding, they can re-enter it and stay alive for a short while, just a second, before the gas kills them. This is on the idea of suffocation. So whereas instead of being killed instantly, the player can survive, quote-unquote, for a small while inside the gas before being harmed by it. And so after that, once the gas expands, it starts to collapse back down to its original position and shape. The gas is not lethal in its original shape until you touch it, in which case it starts expanding and becomes lethal. And it is also lethal while it is collapsing as well. So here we have a practice section. It doesn't have fire in this section, it's just 2 blocks of gas, electricity, and ice. So the idea is to jump over the spikes into the gas, which will trigger it, causing it to expand, and the ice will slow the player down, so they have to move through the electricity as it charges and move through that second gas block as that gas block also expands. And I was unable to accomplish it. I did not move fast enough, so instead of losing momentum by letting go of my moving key, I'm just going to press it all the way through and make it to the checkpoint. This next one is the mastery section. Oh, I forgot to mention, the gas is adjustable. I added a editable variable, so players can decide, or not players, designers can decide how big they actually want their gas to expand or how small they want their gas to expand. And depending on the scale and placing of the gas, they can also choose what shape it expands to, be it a rectangle that is adjustable based on size, or a perfect square. So this next one we're going to be jumping over 2 fires into more electricity and ice. This ice is a lot bigger, and the electricity is also a lot bigger, and so is the gas, which means we'll have to move quickly. I did not move quick enough. Oof. Alright, there's another, what's the emphasis on the size of the gas. So like I said, there is a set scale hard-coded into the gas for how big it can get, but it scales also on the size that the designer makes it. So the designer will have to adjust accordingly how big they want the gas to expand or not. So we're going to jump over. I touched the fire one too many times. That was my own mistake, and my own mistake as well. I guess I didn't add enough extra lives here. And just for the record, like I said, the spikes are not mine, the extra lives and checkpoints are not mine. These were created in the game for the first month by the original creator. My addition for this sprint was purely the hazard tiles. So as I make my way back over, I'll discuss further parts about this sprint. So I would have liked to been able, one thing that I was not able to do that I would have liked been able to do is simply more complicated materials. Right now, each hazard is distinguishable. However, I would have liked to been able to add like particle systems, just for a quick example, to the gas and fire, just for more visual fidelity and visual clarity that, yes, they are indeed what they are and they're more easily identifiable. That's what I would have liked to have been able to do. But apart from that, everything functions 100% as intended, and that's my mechanic. Thank you for watching. I hope you thought it was pretty cool. And yeah, I can't wait to I actually can't wait to try to finish them off. There are some more things, like I said, more things I would like to be able to do and flesh out as well. Everything is functioning as intended, but not perfectly as intended, if that makes sense. Behavioral traits, as well as the visual additions, and feedback as well. Feedback is another thing. So each one has their own version of feedback. With the ice, we saw the player visually slows down and are unable to jump. Fire and lava is an instant death scenario. The electricity, like I mentioned, charges up, so you see the colors become more solid, and the gas visually expands. Now, these, like I mentioned before, these hazards can be placed however the designer so chooses, and they can, because of this, you are able to make all sorts of different kinds of puzzles, depending on how the designer wants to make them. It also promotes an idea of more, I guess, what's the word? Agency, of more alternative routes for the player to take, encouraging them to consider the weights of different hazards. For instance, if one path that they can visually identify has more fire, more gas and electricity, and an alternative path, maybe above or below it, has enemies but ice and fire as well, it's an opportunity for the player to decide which path they want to take based on what they're more comfortable with, or if they want to challenge themselves and think they can go with the harder path as well. And combined with the base assets that the original creator of this template made in month 1 of Capstone, you can come up with some pretty cool stuff as well. For instance, I have a demonstration section at the very end. The creator came up with bounce pads, as well as a teleporter mechanic the player interacts with, as well as doors and breakable blocks as well. So in the far back there, those are the teleporters. In the front here, these are doors, enemies and spikes as well. And those purple blocks there, those are actually breakable from above or below. So yeah, it's just a really cool idea for potential really cool puzzles, and as well as really cool exploration and platforming as well. So yeah, let me know if you have any feedback for me. Like I said, I will plan on making more complex platforming segments, and making them easier to understand as well, and more easier to identify with feedback and visuals as well.
My name is Michael Schutz, and for my mechanic, I created the Crusher. Game Vision. The Crusher will work as an obstacle for both platforming and puzzles. Player Agency. The player will need to time their movements to prevent being crushed by the Crusher. The player can also jump on top of the Crusher to ride it to higher areas. Clarity and Learnability. The Crusher will telegraph when it's about to start crushing. The Crusher will have spikes on the bottom to help the player understand that it is a dangerous hazard to be avoided. The Crusher makes sounds when activated. The Crusher has a light on it that will flash green/red when telegraphing, turn red when crushing, and turn green when resetting. Reward and Punishment. The reward is getting past the Crusher and making progress in finishing the level. The punishment is the player losing a life if crushed. back. When the crusher hits a wall or floor, it will make a sound and shake the camera. Iteration and variation. To introduce the crusher, I have one that is visible but not required to avoid. For practicing the crusher, I have a few spaced out so the player can get used to the timing required to make it past one crusher at a time. For the mastery section of the crusher, I have put more together as a challenge to get past all of them. I use the mastery section to show that the crusher can destroy breakable blocks.
Good evening, MSI. Welcome to my presentation for the Team 10 build. So here we have Milestone 1 for V4. Gonna go ahead and open that. So for the game that we have the 2D platformer of the game. And basically what this is a make it to the end and avoiding kill enemies type of game. If we go down to level select here and we go to the mechanics, we have the crusher turret and conveyor and tile hazard test, which these three are my teammates, but this one is mine. So let's go ahead and click on the conveyor test. So the entire purpose of this test is to navigate the player over large spaces or gaps that may be in the area or level. So let's say that the player has the need to get from this side all the way onto the other side. Well, we have these orange platforms here, and these platforms skate the player forward. Some skate the player backwards, as you see here, and the player can, fight against it. But for the most part, each platform skates the player forward. Now, the reason for using these will be to not only get them across areas faster, but some of them will be used as obstacles. So you see how this one is restricting me from getting to this part right here? The speed is reversed for this one. I used a Boolean and a subtract node to make these go backwards rather than forwards. And I changed the speed on them to make sure that they're fighting a little bit harder. The player will have to navigate through those and get over them in order to carry on the rest of the level, otherwise they'll be stopped and thrown off of them. Now some will be faster, like these ones for example, instead of the other ones which were at a simple 400 or 300 speed, these ones right here are different because they're all at 550. So some of them do have a different speed to them, and they will throw the character off. So they just, if I were to just stop moving on one of these, like so, I'll fall into the void and I'll lose life. But for the most part, the player will have to know how to maneuver through them. They will have to navigate, and in some cases there might be one in the front of the level in like this, where the player will have to do sort of like a run on it to get to the other side, and then they'll win the level. So design principles that will come with this is like giving the player a challenge, another obstacle to beat, rather than just avoiding enemies or turrets. They can also have map obstacles that will get in the way of them playing the game or defeating the level. Another thing is that it helps them propel the level faster, get past these gaps faster, rather than having to wait on a swinging method or something like trying to navigate by jumping over and falling right into the pit. These give them a little platform to jump on, and then the platform pushes them forward, so they don't have to really worry about dying to just straight jumping into the pit below. But yes, that is it for my presentation. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.